So many desires, or as many desires, so many blankets. Covering the radiance of the Spirit. We have to uncover to discover. We have to uncover, discover. We have to uncover, discover.
Okay, welcome everyone to the Divine Discoveries podcast. My name is Pratyaksh Pai. Many of you know me as Prat. We are so excited, and when I say we, I have a couple of castmates with me, but we're quite excited to be starting this podcast where we talk about all things spirituality. Today's going to be we hope to give you guys a good introduction to the concept of spirituality. So I'd like to introduce at this time my castmates. We have all the way from Medellin, Colombia, Christiane Schatzinger, a great a colleague. She was an ex-colleague of mine who was also a very good friend of mine. So Christiane, would you like to say hello to the audience?
Hello, Prat. Hello, Vikram. Hello, fellow listeners. I'm thrilled to be here, and I can't wait to go on this journey with all of you. So thank you.
Awesome. At least one of us, I think, can open the window and enjoy the weather, right?
That's right. It's gorgeous. 80 degrees and sunny.
Send us some of that over here.
Okay. Sure.
And we have with us all the way from Potomac, Maryland, Vikram Mathur, who is also well known in this community, in the DMV area.
Well, thank you so much for the introduction, Prat. And it's really an honor and privilege to be a part of this wonderful podcast and speak with you and speak with Christiane to share our views on spirituality, which is an integral part of all our lives.
Absolutely. So what we're going to make a tradition, sort of a customary part of our podcast every episode is we're going to do some invocation prayers. You guys may be familiar, the listeners may be familiar with some of these prayers already. If not, you can certainly look it up and either chant it along when you're listening. It's always a great practice to chant the holy name. And that's what we want to start off our podcast with. And at least for just this episode, this initial episode, I'm going to be actually explaining a little bit, not necessarily the meaning of it, but really just introduce you to these mantras and why we're chanting them and why it's connected and why it's important for today's, for us to do this on a regular basis. So we always start off with paying respects and giving our obeisances to the Guru, the great teacher, the teacher principle that guides us from outside and within. So we have many teachers in our lives, and we're specifically talking about the Guru who is above all gurus, the one who actually leads us and guides us spiritually. And that may be whoever it is for you. Please remember that Guru when you chant this mantra. Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Om Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha. Gurur Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Gum Guru Pyo Namaha. Sadguru Maharaj Ki Jai.
Hey.
Next, we offer our respects and prayers to Lord Ganesha, who is the one who popularly known as the one who must be invoked first. So he removes any obstacles or any impediments that may be in your path. So we remember Lord Ganesha in this moment. And it also helps when you're chanting to remember an image of that deity. So you're mentally also thinking about that deity. So the remover of obstacles, Lord Ganesha, please bless us so that whatever we undertake, there are no obstacles in our path. So we say, Om Vakratunda Mahakaya Koti Surya Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada. And then we have a mantra dedicated to Lord Shiva, which is called the Mahamrityunjaya mantra. Mrityu means death. Jaya means victory. So we're trying to gain victory over the fear of death and fear of other things and anxieties that we have in our life and fears that we have. So this is the one that helps us dispel those fears and instill us with confidence. So Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukamiva Bandhanan Mrityor Mokshiyam Amritat Om Namah Shivaya Om Namah Shivaya Om Namah Shivaya. Next we have the very popularly known Gayatri Mantra. And Goddess Gayatri is a very, very integral part, very important ingredient in order to help our minds absorb this very difficult to understand wisdom. This great wisdom which is useful to us, but sometimes hard to comprehend. So Goddess Gayatri is very helpful in that. So Om Bhur Bhuvaswaha Om Tat Saviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yonaha Prachodayat. Next we have a very simple mantra that many of you have heard. It's on Lord Rama, Sri Rama. So it's called the Taraka mantra. Taraka means one that kind of takes you across the ocean of life. So Taraka mantra is very powerful. So it goes Om Shri Rama Jaya Rama Jaya Jaya Rama. I'll repeat it twice more. Om Shri Rama Jaya Rama Jaya Jaya Rama. Om Shri Rama Jaya Rama Jaya Jaya Rama. And the last one, known as the Mahamantra, is chanted sometimes in some certain traditions, Krishna first, Rama first, doesn't matter, because it can be chanted in any situation by anybody, and you don't have to take a shower or be cleaned up to do it. It's a mantra that can be chanted at any time, unlike some other mantras that have certain restrictions and certain stipulations. The Maha Mantra is the most powerful mantra, and it can be chanted, like I said, by anybody at any time of the day. Doesn't matter. So it goes Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Once again, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. May peace be upon everyone. Om Shanti 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 Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. That means, may everybody in the world be peaceful. And we pray for that. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Christiane, who has a prayer for us that she'd like to recite.
Amen, Prat. Thank you. That was very beautiful and personally very calming and centering. So thank you. So I'm going to recite a very short but beautiful and profound prayer. It's called the Shehekianu. And this is a prayer that is recited to express gratitude for new experiences or extremely special occasions. And I think it really helps us to realize the miracle of the present moment. So first, I will say it in Hebrew. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehekianu v'kimanu v'higianu lazman chazeh. Amen. And the English translation of this, if we can get as close to as possible to a translation, is Blessed are you, eternal Spirit, who has given us life, sustained us, and allowed us to arrive in this moment. Amen. So you may be saying, okay, why is a gal named Christiane reciting Hebrew prayers? So I want to tell you that I also have a Hebrew name, and that name is Chaya. I am a follower of the Jewish faith and tradition, but I do consider myself to be a spiritual seeker, and I've developed friendships with these two incredible young men, my fellow castmates, and I'm just so excited to be here with all of you as we embark on our spiritual journeys together. So Vikram, do you want to tell me a little something, or tell our listeners a little something about yourself?
Absolutely. for me and my connection to spirituality, it really goes back to my childhood. I think my earliest memory of being spiritually inclined was when I was 3 years old. And what happened is my grandparents introduced me to these television serials that were based off of the important Hindu epics, Ramayana and Mahabharata. And I watched those episodes with my grandparents, and it's a little inexplicable, but somehow it just connected. I can't describe as to how at that age that resonated, but it did. And I watched Ramayana, I watched Mahabharata, I watched a show called Krishna as well, which I would say is probably the show that had the deepest impact on me. But since that time, I used to love going to the mandir to pray. I used to love reading different books, as that were suitable for a child at that time, on those topics, and it it started a journey that continues to today, which is a belief in the divine, and using that belief, using that faith, to develop an optimism and to develop a moral compass that guides everything that I do. So when there are challenges, when there are things that seem, difficult to conquer, that belief is what helps me navigate that and go through those difficulties and face those challenges. So that, in a nutshell, is kind of how my spirituality began and how it continues today.
Great. Thank you. That's so interesting. And I love that it's your belief in the divine is providing you with optimism and a moral compass. And I think we need that more than ever in this world. I was actually just on the phone with a friend of mine who used to live in California, and we're talking about the LA fires, and not to get totally sidetracked with current events and whatnot. But I think that if we ever are all looking for a moral compass, I think today is a great day. So thank you for sharing that. Prat, do you want to tell me a little something about yourself and where you are spiritually?
Sure. I draw parallels from both of what you guys said, especially with the childhood thing. I grew up watching the same shows that Vikram did, and we totally connect on that. But one thing I'll say in addition to that, which I had the absolute supreme blessing, I would say, is to be born into a family that's very religious and wanted to maintain tradition in this country. But that kind of, the seed for that even was planted by an enlightened master who is, I would say, the patriarch of our family, who was responsible for that foundation or that seed to be planted within me. And I'll say I must have, really, I thank my stars that I was born, that I was given this birth into this family, because it's not something that you can choose. And I'm very, very thankful that my grandfather, Sadguru Sant Keshavadas, is who I'm referring to. He was, of course, a grandfather, but I consider him more of a guru now, because I use his wisdom and his lectures that I listen to. That later on we're going to play a clip from him, so you all will be able to hear him. But what an absolute treasure it is for me to be able to understand this great Vedic wisdom that he taught to Westerners for all the way from the late '60s to the later '90s, I would say, almost for a 30-year span, where he traveled to the U.S. and different Western countries and European countries, and did amazing satsangs in English, and really resonated with so many people. Whoever came across him or came in contact with him, they all were, their hearts were touched, and I think somewhere they became better people. So that was an added benefit, I would say, or that was like the main route for me, and then everything else kind of followed suit after that. So and it kind of grew for me. I became more interested in this as I got into college. I led the Hindu Student Council chapter at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and organized a lot of great events there. And I kind of feel like I got in touch with so many youthful people, of my age, that were interested in this stuff, and that kind of really reinvigorated that sort of like dormant interest in spirituality, in religious events and stuff. So it really took off from there. And I think when COVID happened, it really, again, it kind of reminded me of how we look at life and how we sometimes forget to prioritize the right things, and how we should handle certain situations in our life, and how we should use this great resources that we have within the Vedic system to help us navigate through life. And it's become a major part of my life, and I hope it only grows. And of course, this is one of the ways that I'm getting to express it, is through this podcast. So I got this idea because podcasting is something that's very in today. It's happening in so many people are doing it around the world, and different genres of things. And even within spirituality, that genre in particular, there's so many people, so many different podcasts out there. But I hope that we do it in our own way, and I hope that people take interest in subscribing and making it a part of their regular listening library.
Very nice, very nice. Do you want to talk a little bit about what the word like spirituality might mean to you? Because I know it's a huge term and there's so many different angles and aspects and definitions and ways of thinking about it and speaking about it. So if I can ask each of you, how do you guys define spirituality?
Vikram, you
Sure.
can go first.
Oh, thanks, Brett. For me, spirituality starts with just one simple core, which is connection with the divine. Connection with the divine. It's a bond that is individual to each person. Each person would express it in their own way. But for me, it's kind of like a friendship. I look at it as a friendship with the divine. So the divine is someone that you can always talk to about anything. And although it might seem like a one-sided conversation because you're the one speaking and the divine is an entity, you can feel within you what the response is. So I would say first and foremost, it is connection with the divine. The second piece is, how do you take that connection of goodness and you apply it into your day-to-day life? How do you strive to become a better person? How do you strive to give joy to those around you? How do you strive to take decisions that don't shake who you are as a person and allows you to go to sleep at night? That is, I'd say, the second pillar of spirituality. And then using that to try, it's not easy to do this, and I'm by no means am I there. So I would say the third pillar is something that I'm striving for, and I'm sure everyone to some degree striving for. The third is to slowly look at life, and whatever happens, no matter what you do and whatever happens, you accept it as being a result of one, the actions that you've taken, but also the journey. So you don't look at anything as good or bad. You look at it as something that has occurred. And we all know that whatever is good and whatever is bad, nothing is permanent. So if you think of it that way, and it's not easy to do that. So I'm not 100% there where I can accept all that, but I know that's what it is to find a stillness and move on. That's the third pillar of spirituality for me. So that's how I would define it.
Beautiful. Incredible. Yes. Pratt, how about you? Does what in that resonates with you, or, would you like to expand upon that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think he hit on three pillars that I completely agree with, and totally, I see it the same way. But when you look at the word spirituality, right? When you dissect the word, you hear the word spirit, right? And a lot of people look at this word spirituality with words that start with I. Intrigue, interest, interesting, sometimes ignorance towards it. They don't really care to even look at it or think about it. They just discard it from their life because, I don't know, it seems like something so heavy, like a big weighty mountain that I don't even want to even deal with, And some people say, oh, spirituality, that's not me. I'm not spiritual. It's not me. So when people say it's not me, I would say, maybe ask them the question back is, what are you? And that's the interesting thing, that many of the great sages and saints have actually tried to get people to think about. Have you thought about your purpose? Have you thought about why you exist? Have you thought about what is your mission in life? Why are you here? This contemplation of life's purpose is what we as human beings can do. That's not something that we can expect animals to do, right? We live around all these different forms of nature around us, and none of them have that capability to contemplate upon this. So when you talk about spirit, it's not just being like, having zeal about something and saying, I'm high spirited. Oh, I love your spirit. People say, I love your spirit. You're so enthusiastic about something. That's one thing. Of course, that's a byproduct of that life force that's within you, that's giving us that ability to perform whatever we want through these bodies that we have. But at the end of the day, the word spirit, or it's also referred to as soul, also has been referred to in Sanskrit as Atma or Jivatma. In the Bhagavad Gita, we hear the word Jivatma. So that means that it's an individual soul. And what is this soul? What is our connection with the soul? We hear the word spirit or soul a lot. A lot of people have heard these terms, but what is our connection with that? And Vikram actually alluded to a little bit of it, is like we're getting in touch with the divine. So we're connecting with the divine. We're finding a way to converse with the divine and express our gratitude, or our, even surrender our problems to the divine. But again, like, what does it actually mean? And what is our connection with the soul? So I'd like to actually ask you both a question, or a couple of questions actually. One is, what would you guys say is the reason that we do everything that we do? Because without a reason, we don't act, right? We're trying to achieve something, whether that's success in our workplace, or successful endeavors personally, professionally. Even when we get away from all of this and we want to take a vacation, what is it that we're trying to achieve?
Wow. I mean, that's a great question. I mean, my thought immediately kind of went to, there's perhaps two levels. Like, we have our animalistic, physical, material side and needs that are driving us. Like, I'm hungry, I need food, I need money, I need sleep, all of those physical wants and needs that are very real because we are in these bodies. Yeah. But I think all of us are believers that there's much more going on, that we do have something that is beyond the physical, beyond the corporeal, beyond the materialistic, and
Right.
that is the soul, is the atma. Some people like to say heart, you know, some people talk about mind. Maybe people who are more intellectually inclined are going to go a rationalistic, logical mind aspect. But you know, I think throughout history, theologians, like you said, saints, sages, philosophers, everyone is grappling with this. Like, who are we? Why are we here? What is the purpose? What is driving us? Right? And so there's hundreds of different answers and responses. And I think that's what we're here to try to explore.
Yeah, but what you said is all spot on. But what I was trying to ask is, or trying to get more, don't think too hard about this, because every single thing that we do, right? Every single thought that we have and every single action that we take to bring those things to fruition. I have a goal. I'm going to work towards it. And at the end of that goal, what is it that we want to feel? That's what I'm asking. There's one word, or you can, I guess
Like
there are synonyms to that word. But
happiness. Is that
ding,
the
ding,
word?
Ding, 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 ding.
Ding,
What were
ding,
you
ding. That was like
Vikram,
Harvard University's #1 class, right? It was like the course on happiness. Everybody wanted to take it. Everybody wants it. Yeah, that's it, right? That's what we're trying to do here, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, Christiane, I think a lot of what you said was what was on my mind as well, as happiness or bliss,
Yes.
as we also say. You know, I think, so if I look at myself and how I do things, right? So I talked a little bit about how spirituality is my moral compass, but, you know, as a non-enlightened human being, you know, I am motivated by, you know, what is the material needs of the day-to-day life, right? I'm going to admit that I'm driven by that, given what those responsibilities are, and you know, kind of and I guess I'll be very open and candid here, since we're talking about spirituality, and you know, kind of what my biggest driver in life, from a material standpoint, has been legacy. So I've often thought about the fact that we come on earth, we play our part, and then we depart, right? But oftentimes, you know, a lot of us, we do it, and that's kind of it, right? But I've always thought about the fact that in this particular body, in this particular name, in this is this one occurrence, and it's a unique occurrence. So I want to do something in my life that, if I accomplish something within this frame that I am now, that lives on forever in some way. I may not be physically here, but something that I've done lives on, just so that it is there, that in this particular type of shape, that happened, right? Because the soul has no name, and the soul is unborn, and all that. So that's my material driver, I would say. But I would also say that there's many different perspectives on this, and this is my personal perspective. So we talk in spirituality about desire, right? To let go of desire and be free of attachments and be free of wants. And to some extent, I do agree with that, and I do understand the purpose behind that, because if you don't want anything, then you're not attached to anything, so you're not sad about anything. But the other way I look at it is that I feel that every time you are born, whether this is conscious or unconscious, you are driven to try and do something that has been left unfulfilled. And the more that you fulfill that, whether it's several lifetimes or one lifetime, then once you've fulfilled that, you have nothing left anymore, and that's when you become part of where you originally came. So some people look at desire as being the kind of negative thing, but some people look at it also as taking you to where you eventually want to be, which is free. So I know I went really deep there, but it just came to my mind.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff. No, absolutely. But when we talk about what we're trying to get out of every single thing that we do, right? And that's ultimately is what we want to be, is happy or blissful or joyful. And that's ultimately what the purpose of what our existence naturally wants. So essentially, like, the soul's need is to desire for happiness, right? And so we, as individuals, all want to achieve that in everything that we're doing. But the thing is that we're looking for material happiness, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the important thing to understand here is what I spoke about earlier was, what is the soul and what is our relationship with it? It's clearly defined in practically all our scriptures that the soul is who we are. The soul is actually us. And what we identify with, the body, the mind, the intellect, and all these other aspects that the soul is connected to in this life that we're in, we believe that is our reality. We believe that is our truth, and that is our real existence. And what we are reminded of through these great saints, and they're basically them explaining it to us through explaining the great teachings, is basically understand your true nature. So what are we trying to get out of spirituality is to get in touch with that inner true nature that lies within us. And that will then gradually make us better human beings. It'll allow us to handle ourselves better, because unfortunately what happens is, when we are driven by material desire, and and that's basically mind control, is what we're trying to do through spirituality, is because the mind has controlled us. According to the great wisdom, is that we've had several lifetimes where mind has controlled us, and we've always been a slave to the mind. And what spirituality tells us is that, hey, there's something higher than what you are doing in your day-to-day life, because that becomes mundane. If you think about it, everybody's doing the same thing, right? They're born, then they get educated, then they look for a good job, then they have wife and kids, or whatever, family life. And then, all these things are, and then if you think about it, we're also taking on different identities, right? Like, we're born into a particular culture. So we're Indians, then we have the religion that we take on, right? And like Vikram said, the soul doesn't have a name. Similarly, the soul doesn't have a gender. The soul doesn't have a religion. It's based on what we are understanding is based on our karmas. We're given certain bodies and certain births into a family that we have earned. Okay, and what happens is, when we come into this world, we forget what our purpose is, and what our true purpose is. Okay, and what we do is we work towards achieving material success, one thing after another. It could be from the infancy stage, when you're a toddler stage, when you're seeing your older siblings walking or talking or whatever, you gain inspiration from them, and you're like, oh, this is what I should be doing. So you're working towards, from that age all the way till later on in life, we're constantly looking at other people externally. We're extroverted in terms of our senses, right? Our senses are perceiving other people's lives as better than ours sometimes. And social media today has also added to that. And our mind begins to think that, oh, somebody else is happy. I'm not doing what they're doing, so I need to be doing that. So somewhere our mind is telling us that we need to be living better lives than what we are. And we're not happy sometimes with what we're doing or with what we have. So spirituality also opens our minds to understand that, hey, the happiness that we're seeking, again, the happiness is not something that's limited. We're not saying, oh, we only want to be this happy, right? And we're also not saying we only want to be happy for one day of the week. That's good enough if we can be happy for one day of the week. We want happiness that lasts all the time and continues to grow, right? And that is impossible to achieve in this world if we continue to, I would say, harbor the desires of material existence, right? Now, Vikram said that, obviously we have material desires, and that's fine because we all are having that. Nobody here is enlightened. And I'm guessing a lot of the listeners who are listening, I hope nobody enlightened is listening to us. We might sound pretty stupid. I don't know. But but the thing is that we're all imperfect, okay? But at the same time, there's a part of us that is perfect. And it's the journey of life and how we lead it and how we sort of go towards that perfection that then will decide, whether we're getting future visits back into this world, or are we reaching the ultimate goal of liberation, which is what is called moksha or nirvana in Buddhism, which is that ultimate release. Because that's where we came from, is the abode of God. And God says the spirit soul is as indestructible and as immortal as himself. So if I were to ask somebody on the street, hey, given you'll have good health forever, would you want to be mortal or immortal, right? What do you think most people would say? Immortal, right? 9 out of 10, right? So I would say we're mortal and immortal at the same time. But what we don't understand is what part of us is mortal and what part of us is immortal. We want this physical existence in this world and what we've experienced to last forever, because we think that's the joy. The biggest joy is in that, what we have done, in the material plane, like, movies, enjoying good food, and taking vacations and seeing the world. That's what we think is the highest, happiness. And what spirituality does is opens up this other plane of consciousness to us and says, hey, there's something higher than this, because practically everybody who can afford it is doing these things. So how are we really setting ourselves apart? And what it also helps us understand is that there is immortality to us. And the true identity that we are, the true person, true being that we are, is that soul, that spirit soul. So when we begin to identify more with that and less with who we are materially, how we appear, how we speak, how we talk, and how people say, oh, you're so good at this. And these are the identities that we start to, take on. And this is really a way for us to uncover from all those false identities that are temporary and for a short period of time that our lives exist, and for us to realize that we're something higher than that. Our true nature is that of a divine quality. It is a spark of God. So it emanates from God. God created us as a particle of himself. And that immortalizes us. So there's no death to us in a truer sense, but there is a depth to what we think is our identity almost most of the day, most of the time, which is the body. And that at some point is going to perish. So it really opens our eyes, I think, to that. And that's what I think spirituality has really taught me, is that, I'm never going to perish as a being. I may take on different costumes and different identities, but I as a being am always going to live, and I'm indestructible.
Wow. Vikram, there was a lot that Prat just covered. Do you have any thoughts or responses or anything you want to elaborate upon?
Well, I think Pratt hit the nail on the head. I don't have anything further to add to his points. I think I would agree with everything that he said, quite simply.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I just want to say one more thing is that the desires for happiness and joy in a material sense is okay, because this world has been created and given to us, and we're born into it to survive. So we must eat, we must do these things to survive. But I think as we become as we go further into the path of spirituality, right, and we practice it, I think gradually our attachments or our desires for happiness get turned to a different direction. It gets tuned to a different direction. And it's a very organic process where you start detaching from worldly material things naturally. It's not something that you're forcing upon yourself. It's that you are using the spiritual practices for your own benefit, so that you can navigate through life better, you can handle your emotions better. And a byproduct of that will actually be the slowly detaching and slowly losing interest in material desires. I think it's just something that when you are on this path and you progress on this path and you grow on this path, I think that's a byproduct that automatically happens.
Right, and I would just add to what Pratt said is, and I don't know if I'm getting too ahead of ourselves, but it relates to the point that within Hinduism there is the belief in many different eras or yugs, as they're called, Dwapar Yug, Treta Yug, Satyug, and Kali Yug. Not in that order, but those are all of them. We are currently in Kali Yug, which is considered to be one of the most tumultuous ones, where there's a lot of unrest, there's a lot of discord, there's a lot of lawlessness, there's a lot of immorality, so to speak. But in each of these eras, it's been described as there being many different components toward achieving spiritual bliss or achieving freedom from bondage, the material bondage. But in Kali Yuga, because it is such a difficult time, the scriptures, and correct me if I'm wrong, the scriptures have actually said that there's a very simple way to achieve that freedom, and that is through bhakti or worship.
Absolutely.
So in other areas, there might be other things that you have to do to achieve that. But in this time, just having that connection to the divine, that spirituality, that devotion is what will help get you to that freedom. So I think what Pratt was saying, it just an addition to that.
Absolutely, I 100% agree, and that's the understanding I have as well, is that the expectations of the different yugas went from really high expectations of the people of that time to very simplistic expectations now. And as Vikram said, Bhakti Yoga is the prescribed way for people to easily enter into communion with God, and that connection and that communion that you establish with God is called yoga. So a lot of people have. So these are the types of things that we're going to discuss in this podcast today and going forward. Is a lot of these words are in our society and very much used in Western society, but many people don't know the true meanings or the truest context or the larger context of what these mean. So we hear the word yoga and instantly you start thinking breathing techniques and you start thinking different body positions that you're exercising and these kind of things, right? That is one aspect of yoga. It's called Hatha Yoga. But then as you read the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna brings out so many different types of yogas. then each one is like a path that you can pick based on your temperament and your personality, what resonates with you. And that is how you establish your connection with the divine. So, yeah.
Okay. So do you want to elaborate on some of your spiritual practices? Speaking of
Sure.
yoga.
I mean, yeah, I can say that, like Vikram said, bhakti is the easiest. So I think most people want to go the easy route, even though sometimes the easiest route may not seem easy in the beginning. But I think it grows on you. It's something that works on you. And in bhakti, um, the number one uh, the number one prescribed way of practicing bhakti is chanting the holy name or singing the holy name, and reading the scriptures, the stories, like the Srimad Bhagavatam or the Ramayana, or say for the Christian people, the biblical, the episodes of what happens with Jesus Christ, his life story. And such scriptures exist in all the world religions. And what that should do is inspire you to believe that this divine appearance of the Lord, of God, in whatever form it may be, at whatever part of the world it may be, has taught humanity something amazing. And through their own experiences, in the sense that they never made the path easy for themselves. Okay, they showed humanity how they can also go through troubles. So God is showing also through His own example how we should take a guru, accept a guru, and learn from that. These are the types of things that these incarnations have taught us, and these great masters and messiahs have taught us. Is go through this life with acceptance of whatever comes your way, but at the same time, the way that it becomes easy to do that is you devote yourself. There's a little bit more surrender of your ego that you're doing, which helps us feel that we can be more in love with God, if that makes sense. Because otherwise, even the term love is very selfish and egotistical in this world. I'm doing something for you, so you love me back, that kind of thing. There's a lot of transactional approach to how we have our emotions tied to other people. But what this does is bhakti really opens up our heart and allows God to take over. And when we surrender our ego and say, God, you know what's best. Let me just chant your name. Let me invest my time into learning about the pastimes that you have performed in this world. And that will then inspire you, or inspire some, I should say, to follow this path of bhakti. And you realize that, God is with you at all times. You're carrying His holy name. And the holy name has been described by God Himself and prescribed for the people of the Kali Yuga. Even Lord Rama did that in the Treta Yuga before he left the world. Lord Krishna obviously did it. And these saints have basically, you can say they're messengers of God, programmed to teach people that, look, the holy name is as powerful as the God Himself. God may not incarnate in this time period that we're in. He may not show Himself to you because we're all, I don't know what we have done to deserve His darshan, to be honest with you, to deserve His appearance. So that's why a lot of people don't believe that there's a God, because they physically have never seen anything like it, right? But I think there's enough when you actually think about your own life. At some point or another, you may have felt like something miraculous happened to you. Somebody came in front of you and showed you the way when you thought, okay, every place is like, I was in Edison, New Jersey once, right? And that happened to be the day that most of the restaurants and everything was closed. And somebody just happened to come, drive up when we're like going from one place to another and we're really hungry. We want to eat somewhere in Edison where you get all the best Indian food, right? And somebody just shows up and says, hey, these restaurants are closed, but I can point you to the place where they're open today, and they happen to be one of the few that's open that day. So, and then that person, just like when you're, like you're talking with your friends and you're like, oh, let's go there, and looking up the address in your phone, by then that person has just driven off and you can't find that person anymore. So somebody like that is sent your way. Sometimes you're in this like major crisis sort of a situation. What do and somebody comes to help you, and I'm sure we've all experienced something like that, so that is what we should, that's what we often, when we put our faith into something like that, I think we empower ourselves and say, nothing's going to fully defeat me. I think there's something, it doesn't, and it's not an egomaniac way of looking at life. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying think of yourself as higher than somebody else, or that you're, that you're all powerful and nothing can go wrong. Obviously, anybody who says that is lying, because everybody has to face adversity. Everybody on a daily basis faces something that they wish, I wish this didn't happen or that didn't happen. It could be something really small, but but this is what helps us have a bigger picture, and even the small little imperfections are like, whatever, it's okay. We'll get through it. We find a way to feel more empowered and stronger. And it's not an ego thing at all. The ego takes a back seat. We take on higher consciousness, if that makes sense.
So, Prat, this sounds fantastic. This is fantastic, but I feel like you're making it sound easy. So I want to know about some of the challenges. Like, do you ever have a hard time with some of these concepts or incorporating these beliefs into your day-to-day life?
Well, okay. So let me go back to, I'm sorry, I didn't quite, I kind of went into this a little deep, and I didn't quite expand on the practices part of it. And I want to give Vikram that opportunity too to speak about the practices. Then we'll go back to what you're saying, if you don't mind. So,
sure.
So yeah, the chanting of the holy name using like a japa mala, like a mala or beads, a necklace of beads. And they have 108. There's a significance of the number 108, and we'll save that for another episode. But that represents those, each one of those beads is when you're chanting that name, or that full recitation of that mantra. So if it's Hare Ram, or if it's Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. So each bead, you're doing it 108 times. And the more that you do it, you're basically invoking that power of God. And it makes you feel good, even though initially it may seem like it's very laborious. I feel like eventually that name will work on your mind and will help purify and channel your mind into the right direction. Let's put it that way. Another thing that helps, obviously, and many psychologists and psychiatrists are prescribing this to their patients, is meditation. So meditation, guided meditation. I like to do guided because I'm very beginner at meditation. Some people can probably just get into it, with nothing, with silence. But for me, I feel like somebody needs to hold my hand audibly, like so I can hear them and say, think about this and think about this, and sort of set the scene for me. And that really helps me. Mentally thinking about the image of God. Like, we've seen so many different idols and pictures of what God may look like in different forms. And I think whichever one really resonates with you, mentally bringing that into your mind while you're chanting is also helpful. Reading of the scriptures, reading the Bhagavad Gita, which really gives you the hard-hitting information of life. It's a guidebook of life, the ultimate guidebook of life. I think that really opens your eyes and changes you as a person, at least a little bit. It makes you think a little bit broader than what you've been looking at. So those are my practices, I would say.
Nice. Vikram, anything there you want to elaborate on? What are your practices?
Well, so much of what Prat said resonates with me. I think for me, I've kind of looked at it as many different things. So part of it is of course carving out some time to sit in the mandir or the spiritual location in the home where we have our idols and photographs of our Hindu gods, to spend some time there. That is definitely part of it. And one thing I do is every Monday I do recite the mala for Shivji, because each day of the week, and I'm sure we'll probably get into this later in another episode, but each day of the week tends to be tagged to one or more Hindu gods, and it's a good day usually to worship them on that day. Though every day is a good day, but Shivji is typically on Mondays, so I usually do the mala. I usually bathe. We have a little shivling, which is a statue symbolizing, I guess you would say, the forehead or the head of Lord Shiva, and I usually bathe that. So that's something I do. And usually on Tuesdays, I recite the Hanuman Chalisa, which is basically an ode to Sri Hanuman. Tuesdays is considered the day of worship for him. So that's something I do from kind of a ritualistic perspective. But I would say that for our listeners out there, that is one way to do it, but there's not particularly a right answer to this. It is, the basic core of it is remembering God and how you feel you would like to establish that connection. I think that there's a world of possibilities for that, because from God's perspective, all God wants is to have that connection, and have it with full devotion and with full love, no matter how you do it, right? So there's many ways to do it, and these are just some that what Pratt and I are talking about are just some ways that we do it. But aside from that, remembering the divine daily is all you really need to do. Just like you go to sleep, you wake up, you shower, you eat, you work, you go to the gym. It's a discipline. And you can carve, even if it's 5 minutes, carve out 5 minutes to do it. That's all it takes. I'm sure if you're spiritually inclined, you can definitely find the time to do that alongside any other activities that you might do. Pratt mentioned something really important, which is, reading the stories and the messages behind the gods. And for me, that has been something really important. So I haven't been much of a reader in that respect, though recently I have started doing that. I just purchased the translation of the Bhagavad Puran in English, so I'm going through that. And primarily that was because of the fact that I love that Krishna serial by Ramnan Sagar, which is based off of that, as well as other Purans. Because I know that whenever there's a visual representation of something for mass consumption, there are small liberties or certain things that may not be included. So I wanted to read the real thing and dip myself into it a little bit more. But at a basic level, even I would say, at least for me, when I watch that show and I see Sri Krishna's many different leelas throughout his life, the strength I get from that is not only from the beautiful messages, but it establishes that belief within me that, this is what God is like. Because, in Lord Krishna's avatar, he never hid the fact that he was God. He did so many amazing things that you can't deny it. And I know we'll probably go into that in another episode as well, Ram, Krishna, and different. But for me, that belief is solidified with that sort of thing. And how hard is it to do this? Like I mentioned, it's a discipline, and I'm sure everyone has it within them to spare 5 minutes to do it. So, and do it your way.
Right. Absolutely. Well said. Well said. And Vikram, you actually brought up a very interesting point that inspired you to read the Bhagavatam, which I'm also reading. So these television series that were created, back in the 1980s, and these great producers who thought, oh, these scriptures, these epics, these historic epics that we have, they need to be brought to the screen so that people can understand. There are people who are visual learners. Some people cannot read, and sometimes you need somebody who can make sense of some of these things to you. So I feel like from a childhood level, you and I both, we really connected with watching these shows, and really that started the love for Ram or Krishna or Lord Shiva or whatever. They all are I shouldn't say characters, but they're all divine beings who emanate from that one source. They're all Bhagwan, right? They're all different aspects of Bhagwan, but we find beauty in that. We find a fascination towards that after watching what these great producers who have made these productions. And it's amazing. And that's another practice that people can do, is if you're not a reader, you're not somebody who likes to sit and meditate, maybe you're not there yet, and you could at least learn a little bit about the pastimes of God in these forms through these shows. It's a great resource.
Absolutely.
I was just going to ask a follow-up. Are these shows made for children, for adults, both? And also languages. What languages are they typically in?
Well, I mean, they're probably in Hindi or very pure Sanskritized Hindi.
Okay, gotcha.
However, they do have English subtitles, so kids who can read can follow along and see what's going on. Now, many a time they may have had a storybook when they were even younger that told them the basic gist of what the story is about. Like I'm reading to my daughter about the Ramayana, and just like these little cardboard boxes, books that kind of give you a basic, very, very, very simplistic idea of what the story is about. So when you start them off at that level, at that very beginner level, and they start to identify with Hanuman and Ram and Sita and all that, then they can gradually build on that. As they get more mature, they can handle the TV show. And then maybe the TV show leads them to other practices. So the good thing is we have options today. Mm. We have the internet, So, and a lot of these shows that Vikram and I know, we used to go to video shops and rent the next part of this series is now all on YouTube. Yeah. You're itching to watch the next episode, and then you go to the video store, you return the one you have, and they're like, oh, sorry, we don't have that part. Somebody rented it. Then you have to wait for that person to return it in order for you to get it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like this was how we watched these things. And now, and gradually then what they did was, like, every Sunday, if you remember, Vikram, there was a channel that would play the Mahabharata every weekend, Sunday night or something, and you would sit in front of your TV and watch it. And in India, from what I've heard, when these shows were originally airing once a week, everything shut down. Businesses, everybody, people used to literally want to watch this show, Mahabharata or whatever, the latest episode. That's how people got hooked to it. That's how addictive it was. And it's great when you hear stuff like that, and that means that it's resonating with the people. It's making sense to them. It's something that's inspiring them. And maybe that's where the love for God starts, because they've actually understood now what actually happened, because these have been properly researched. It's not that people are making up the story along the way, or they're like, oh, maybe I'll include my little, twist in the story. No. As long as they've been genuine and genuine to the original script of how this was written by the great sages who had this revelation in their mind, if that's how they've been depicted, then the justice has been done by the makers, and the people who are receiving it are gaining, incredible wisdom from that. Great teaching.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, Pratt alluded to a really important point, which is that, one, these epics, these stories, there is so much in them. It's really hard to encapsulate it into a 2-hour film. Now, before the series, a lot of these stories were adapted on film, but it was really the series that was able to flesh out the characters, flesh out the ideals, and tell a pretty comprehensive version of what the original epics were like. Now, the one thing I would note to our listeners is that a lot of these stories, they're evergreen, and people still make them today in television adaptations and film adaptations. But the caution is that it is not always, especially in current times, not always accurate to what the original version is to suit a more commercial audience. So, I think, and again, we can go into this in another episode, but I think, kind of watching the original series is the best bet. Some of the newer ones do take a lot more liberties and things. So,
Right.
If you are exposing your children to a visual representation, I would say, Pratt, let me know if you agree to watch the 80s versions of these epics
100%.
and not the newer ones.
100%. 100%. Because I think there was more of a caring to go by the scriptures, how they were written, and try to stay as true to those as possible. So I 100% agree with that. Yeah, totally.
Great. You guys want to talk about challenges with your spiritual practice?
Well, I'll say this, okay? In the world that we're living in, we are filled with challenges. We live in a world of duality, right? So we get some pleasure, some, distress and heat and cold. We can see all of this manifesting around us, right? And look at the way human beings are also there. You can see the duality even in how we function as a society, right? We have all this technology, we have all this great advancement that we made scientifically, medically, and look at how we're living versus the so-called cavemen and how they existed, right? We've come a long way as a human race, and how we're making this world, if you want to say, technologically advanced, and how we can communicate with somebody so easily. Within seconds, we can send somebody a message, and the other person so far away can see it and can video call you. But somewhere I feel like the duality in that, it sounds great when you say, oh, all this technology is making the world smaller. But at the same time, it's also, this AI and all this stuff, it's having an adverse effect, I think, also on taking away our thinking ability. Sometimes we're not doing as much thinking and you're putting our brain to work as much as we used to. And I've always heard scientifically, I don't know what the percentage is, but I've always heard scientifically this fact that the human brain is capable of so much and we're using so little of it. And now with all this advent of technology and where we're going as a society, and I'm not saying we need to stop it or we need to curb it or none of that. Even if I say that, it's not going to happen. The reality is that these things are going to continue to evolve, and things are going to be made even simpler and simpler for us to do. But at the same time, less and less of our brain being used, right? And the mind likes that. Oh, simplicity, quick stuff. We've become a society where we want instant information, instant gratification, right? So somewhere we need to realize that, yes, if we're using these things for the right purposes, to grow as a person, to make me a better person, if it's helping me, or if it's helping me get a good message across to people, if it's, then it's put to good use. So it's not that the technology is bad. It's just that I feel like in this world of duality, somewhere our mind is more in tune with maybe perhaps not. I'm not saying us specifically, but many people are getting harassed online and social media, and people start to create these narratives in their head based on what they're fed. So even the news that we're listening to, all this stuff, we don't know what's fake and what's real anymore. Nobody's giving it to us down the middle, right? So in this kind of a challenging atmosphere, it certainly does cause us some sort of a impediment. And we are somewhere where we're our own best friend at times, and we become our worst enemies as well. So we as a human society are a little bit of both, and I would say maybe more towards the enemy part, because I just look at the world the way it is. Look at what's going on. I don't have to really list out all the things, but we know world wars are going on, and it starts at a very micro level, right? This negativity that exists within a single individual. And it may be something that manifests within your household. You may not take it to the world level, but when so many people within a society, within a community, start believing a same way that, oh, this is something we cannot tolerate, and we have to revolt against it, and then we have to impose our will upon somebody else and all that stuff. You're seeing that at the macro level, right? Microcosm, macrocosm. It's happening all around us. So the challenge is, within a world like this, where there's so many dual ways of thinking, how do we make it a singular way of thinking? So it's not easy that when we live in this world and so many different people, just literally who are around you, have influences on you, right? So it could be your spouse, it could be your parents, it could be your children. Everybody's different. So you want to practice something, and everybody around you doesn't want to do it, or they don't think there's value in it. And a lot of this stuff is intangible. Okay, that's the other thing, is that spirituality doesn't give you tangible results. At least at the onset, you're like, oh, it makes me feel good. But that's what, at the end of the day, remember, what we're working for is an intangible feeling of happiness, right? It's not, yes, you go to work and you get something in return, like a paycheck. That's something that's, okay, I've done this, and this is what I've received in return. It's a material, give and take. But here, what we're really working for, you may still work hard, you may get your paycheck, but at the end of the day, you may still be frustrated, right? You may not be happy in the work that you're doing, but you're just doing it. You're dragging yourself. So essentially what I'm saying is, the challenges are all around us, but what we need to do somehow is keep consistency with what we're doing. If we think that this is the solution, this is something that's going to lead me to the happiness that I'm desiring, that I'm seeking, then don't give up on it. Even, actually, I listened to this kirtan singer, his name is Keshavadas, and he says, chant or do some practice every single day, especially at the times when you don't feel like you want to. Because that's the real challenge, right? Not all the time are we feeling mentally ready to do this. Oh, I'm feeling zen right now, or I'm feeling good right now. Let me go sit down and meditate. Sometimes we don't, so it's not, you don't wait for that feeling to come. You just make it a part of your daily routine. And like Vikram said, the 5 minutes, if you can set that aside, whether it's morning, on your way to work, on evening time, right before you go to bed, whatever it is, if you can stay true to that, then I think that whatever challenges come your way, you'll set them, you'll put them aside, and you'll deal with those challenges better. So, and I think that, we can sometimes be an inspiration and lead through example also, so not saying that that's what your expectation should be, but when you're doing something consistently and you feel better, you feel good, then that can resonate with somebody else who lives with you or around you. Or maybe, and that's the reason why we're actually doing this podcast, if you really think about it, because this is something that we connect with, that we find value in, that we would like to share with other people without any expectation that this is what they're going to do, or, I'm not saying any of that. So the challenges are there. And they'll always be there. But once you find a practice that works for you, that helps you mentally, that lessens your load and lessens your stress, keep to it. Stay consistent.
Absolutely. And I think, one other challenge that I see, which is not necessarily a personal challenge, but more of a social challenge. And Pratt talked a lot about there's a lot of distraction in the world, a lot of disruption, and that is a big factor. I think the earlier generations, our parents and before our parents, I think used to be more and more spiritually inclined. But, as society got hung up onto, I guess, more and more advances, you could say, I think that connection broadly, for, at least for a lot of my, people around me that are around the same age, the spiritual connection is not there like it might be for Pratt or myself or for you, Christiane. And, so it's really incumbent upon us to try to make sure that at the very least our children or kids that we know learn about it and imbibe it like we have. Otherwise, that will not sustain. So that, I think, is one challenge, is to keeping that sustained. This is kind of a deep topic in and of itself, but we talked about distraction. So I would actually add one caveat to what I said earlier about, worship however you like. Definitely do that. But also make sure that in those 5 minutes you apply your mind fully to that devotional task. So it really doesn't serve you well if you, let's say you go to the bund there and you sit down and you pray to God, but your mind is thinking about, I'm going to go to Clyde's tonight for a nice dinner. That doesn't serve you well. And that is a challenge because your mind wants to run everywhere, right? Your mind wants to go here, wants to go there, wants to go there. So it is a little bit of a practice, but to try to, and Pratt gave a very good solution to this, which is when you close your eyes, visualize, if you're have the Ganesh statue in front of you, and that's who you're praying to, close your eyes and visualize that statue even, or visualize any similar photograph, and just focus on it. You can do it just like we do, if we're working, we focus on the thing that we're doing. It's similar. Just focus on that. Keep your mind in control. Make it still. And then when you've done that for 5 minutes, then you truly derive the benefit. It's a challenge, but I put everyone up to this task.
Nice, very nice. So now to look to some more positive aspects. When do you guys feel spiritually balanced or whole? When or what makes you feel that inner spiritual peace that we're also desperately striving for here?
I'll say I feel balanced somewhat when I engage. Like I said, we've talked about the spiritual practices. So whenever I do engage in those, it really helps me feel, that positivity, reinstilling, good optimism for, whatever it is, it shall pass. That kind of a feeling comes if you're going through some sort of an issue in your life or whatever. If not, it's still good to kind of keep yourself afloat and don't get, brought down with, the minor little, minor little likes and dislikes of your life, or whatever you prefer. Your certain things. Some people are so irritable that, when one little thing doesn't go their way, that kind of just like, they throw their hands up and they're not happy that day. We can't be that agitated as a society. And so, but like I said, in the world that we're living in, where everything is instant gratification and instant sharing of information, and we need it right this minute. I'm clicking on this thing. Why isn't it loading? Why is my Netflix buffering? We have all these little frustrations. But we should just be like, okay, it's taking its time, whatever, maybe so that's what I'm saying, is that things are not going to be the way that we're expecting them to be all the time, because we're living in a world that's imperfect, and largely imperfect. And that's just the way it is. And we have to know that more can go wrong than right for you. So if we lower our expectations and just be grateful for what we have, then I would say that that makes you more sort of like temper your expectations with things, and also you look at the world a little differently. You pray for everybody. You have this universal mindset that there's a divinity in everyone, right? And that divinity that's within me is the same as what's within Vikram, you, and everybody else, including non-humans. Okay, so that's another aspect of the soul that I didn't mention earlier, is that the soul doesn't just exist in human bodies, but it's existing in everything that has life. So we need to respect the nature around us also. And somewhere when we don't do that, and our egos take over, and we do everything for the so-called advancement of human enjoyment in life, we're hurting something. And that something that's hurt will, at some point, may come back to hurt you. And that, as a human society, we have to learn. And one of the more recent things that Christiane brought up earlier with the fires and everything, we really offer our prayers and sympathies and condolences to whoever lost their lives. It's such a horrible situation. And I don't want to say anything about it in terms of like, this is why this happens and that happens, because I don't really know. But somewhere I feel like human ego has risen to a level, and then the negativity has risen to a level, and the extremes that we live with, extreme right, extreme left, politics, XYZ, all these things have led us to believe that we have to pick a side, or we have to be on one side of this particular issue or whatever. And somewhere we need to look at, like, if people take sides, that's fine. And I understand in certain respects you do need to take a side, but don't let it get so obsessive that it destroys you from within. And we need to have optimism. We need to pray more. We need to believe that the prayers will have a positive impact as long as we're doing them selflessly. Take ourselves out of it. Actually, one interesting teaching that I learned was that when you pray for everybody in the world, even if it's somebody who's going wrong, maybe the most wretched person in the world, but you're praying for them to somehow maybe see the light, maybe somehow their mind changes. So you're praying for that possibility. I'm not saying that somebody will change their mind, but you're optimistic. You're praying that God, please give this person good sense, and because we don't want to cultivate hate within ourselves. And so when we know that that divinity exists, and just people being ignorant is the reason why they're not looking at it that way, looking at the world that way, the way that they perhaps should, more peaceful. Then we feel like, eventually maybe a better world comes out of this. But, you as an individual can do your part, and that's all we can do. We don't control anybody else. We don't control their thinking. But again, the thinking, the acting, and the speaking, these three things form our karma. So we should be at least careful about how we do those things, how we channel those rights that we've been given, and the free will that we've been given. Because we do have free will, folks. It's not everything that's destiny, that we're programmed and we're going to operate in a certain way that somebody who's programmed us like a robot. We have free will, and we do utilize that free will. But it's just being more conscious about how we utilize that free will that may get us to being in a better place.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with Brad. And I think, earlier when I talked about my definition of what spirituality means to me, I think, when am I spiritual? I I'd like to believe that it's most of the time, if not all the time, and that's not only during, say, when I'm remembering the divine or praying to the divine. It's hopefully it's coming out through whatever decisions I make and whatever actions I take from a moral standpoint, that hopefully I'm being the best person that I can be. And so I'd like to believe that I'm spiritual all the time, but only others can judge that.
Right.
Nice. Very well said. Very well said. Well, it's a new year, guys, and I'm assuming that spiritual growth is a goal of all of ours.
Absolutely.
How do we intend to achieve this goal in the new year? Everyone has their resolution lists, and what are we putting on the spiritual side of the column here?
Well, I don't believe in, this New Year's resolution stuff is something that you grew up kind of hearing from your parents, like, oh, what, I'm going to take this resolution. And before you know it, it's probably broken. The resolution
Right.
is not something that's kept up with. So
Right.
I think of it like, hey, if you need to wait for a week to start doing something, then how true to it are you really going to be? Do it today. If you think something's going to make an impact on your life, if it's something that's going to better your life, who knows about tomorrow? Remember, this world is, everything that happens in this world, like Bikram said earlier, is temporary. We're living in a very transient, very temporary world of duality, right? And I want to emphasize that again, that we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. Certain things can happen in our lives, like you're seeing in the world. Things are happening that is changing everybody's life for forever, perhaps, in a good or bad way, And so when we know, when life is so unpredictable, I think resolutions or starting on a particular date is a waste of time. If you really want to do something for your betterment, start today and be consistent with it. And I'm not saying that I'm doing that, but I feel like maybe I can, through this expression of this podcast that we're doing together, I feel like maybe we can help each other too. And I can gain inspiration from both of you. And of course, our listeners who are going to give us feedback, we welcome that. And also, sorry, I'm going a little bit ahead of it, but I'm just saying that, we do want to encourage our feedback from our listeners, and also any sort of questions that they want to ask for future episodes. We do want to take those so we can do a Q&A segment. And we'd love to, that way we learn together. But at the end of the day, I feel like just do your practice, whatever works for you. Try different practices and see which one really works for you. For me, a combination of practices work. Maybe for a particular individual, it's only meditation, or it's only japa, or it's only kirtan, or whatever it may be. But try different things that either we've said or that you may know that we haven't mentioned. And whatever works for you, just stay with it. Like I said earlier, stay consistent. And that's my goal, is to do some form of practice every day, maybe, and increase it gradually. And I think that's the other thing, is that, Bikram, you said 5 minutes. I think that's the minimal thing that I think we all can do. But I think that 5 minutes will definitely multiply. If it's something that resonates with people and really makes them feel like they're gaining something from it, why wouldn't you want to do something that makes you feel good for a longer? So I think it's something that grows on people when they try. And the biggest problem is the mind doesn't instantly see that it's going to help, and it says, let's not do this. I'll do it tomorrow. So we push off things, and then when December starts, we say, okay, in a month I'm going to start this because it's a new year. So why not start it today? So that's my point. And I guess I would say, whatever works for you, just do it, stick with it. And that's what I'm planning to do personally myself.
Wonderful. I think I have two resolutions. One is just that whatever connection I've built up with the divine up till now. I wouldn't want it to waver in any way, and I would only want it to get stronger and continue to grow. I can't define what growth would be or how that growth would come about, but I think spiritually that would be one of my resolutions. My other resolution, Pratt, you and I've spoken about this offline. It might sound a bit materialistic, but it's, I would say, just from the point of view of what I could be capable of just as an individual, and just talking about legacy and talking about teaching the kids. I'm a creatively inclined person. I act. I've acted in a lot of different things, but I've never really had the chance to play a spiritual character that has, the teachings that we listen to and the teachings that we imbibe.
Sure.
And at some point in my life, so this would be a resolution until it happens, I would want the opportunity to just once just play a character like that kids and others could come and watch it and learn from it. So that would be my second. I know it's not a very deep one, but it's just something that's in me. So
You never
manifesting that through the podcast also.
You never know, Vikram, because when people get into certain characters, it becomes a part of them.
Yeah.
And if you were to enact a spiritual character like that on stage, which I must say Vikram is a spectacular actor. I really have watched him on stage for one play, and he's very talented. And I think any talent that we have, if we use that as a service to entertain, to do whatever it is, to help people, right? That's the whole goal, and help ourselves in the process too. When we help others, you don't know how much that does for yourself when you really take all the selfishness out of it. And I think that's a great desire that you have to play this character, whatever the character may be. Hopefully it comes to fruition, and I will buy the ticket right away to come and watch you.
Thank you.
And I'm sure I'll enjoy that. And whatever it is, I'm sure it'll have a great impact on you from that point on.
Yeah.
For sure. That's awesome.
Awesome. Well, I know there are multiple holidays and important days here in January. So, Pratt, can you share some of these dates with our audience?
Sure, absolutely. Our Hindu calendar or Indian calendar, I follow this app called Drik Panchang, DRIK, Panchang, PANCHANG. It's an app that you can download on your phone and or iPad, and it's really helpful in keeping track of all these festivals that are coming up. Sometimes we don't know what day it is, and it even has your local time zone. So, sometimes based on the difference in time in India, it's celebrated on the next day or whatever. So, certain days that you want to observe a fast or whatever, like for me, like I use that app. Our Indian festivals are so many. They're just so hard to keep track of, and there's so many different days. Some that are very popular and some that kind of go unnoticed, but they also have importance and a significance to them, and that's what we want to kind of bring out, sort of like bring up and as a segment that we'll do, since we're doing this once a month, folks, the listeners, just so you know, because of our lives and what we have going on, we definitely, this is a big part of our life, but at the same time, we're not going to be able to do weekly or daily podcasts. So this is going to be something we're going to try to do. I should say we are sort of determined to do once a month. And hopefully we can keep that up. So we're starting with the new year, 2025. So we wish everybody a happy new year, and we hope that you all, somewhere what we talk about, interests you and resonates with you somewhere. So I'll start off with, going down the list of chronologically in this month, what we have that's, a notable day, celebrating something or the other. So January 1st is New Year. Happy New Year again. It's according to the Gregorian or the English calendar. But recently I saw a video that said that, this is what we all have sort of come to accept, that this is the way our, January 1st is every year the start of our new year. But within different cultures, they have their own new years. So within the Indian culture, our new years are somewhere in the springtime, changing of the season. So I think it's somewhere around March or April, and we call it different things, but we call it personally in my what we call it is Yugadi, and I think there are other names for it too. But yeah, so Happy New Year, January 1st, and January 6th is Guru Gobind Singh Jayanti, which is followed by other followers of Sanatan Dharma in the Sikh tradition, Sikh system. And just to let you know a little bit about Guru Gobind Singh Ji, we offer our obeisances to him on his holy birthday, which was on January 6th. And Guru Gobind Singh established the Khalsa Panth, or the Khalsa, I'm guessing like clan or tradition, adding to the Sikh gurus that were prior to him, emphasizing bravery, equality, and selfless service, tenets of what we spoke about just now. His teachings inspire millions globally, advocating justice, faith in God, faith in one God. That's another key teaching, that God is one, many are the names and forms, and compassion for all is what he stood for. So next one is today, actually. Today happens, the day that we start this podcast is, wow, what a blessing. Swami Vivekananda Jayanti. Swami Vivekananda, who was the pioneer, the great disciple of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, who was known as one of the more well-known saintly beings in the Kali Yuga. His disciple, Swami Vivekananda, was the pioneer who brought the Eastern way of thinking, the Sanatan Dharma tenets and the Vedic wisdom to the West, and actually even debated with people who were knowledgeable about world religions and all that stuff. So he attended one of those conferences and spoke up about the logic that the Vedic tradition, how much logic there is in the information that comes from the Vedic system. So obviously, great day for us to start our podcast. So our obeisances to Swami Vivekananda Ji. And on January 13th, which is tomorrow, the Sikhs, also another Sikh holiday, is Lohri. And the significance of that is, traditionally, Lohri has been a harvest festival, especially significant for families whose livelihoods depended on farming and agriculture. Over time, it has also become a celebration of fire worship, symbolizing warmth and light. So that's another aspect that we're going to talk about in future episodes, where we appreciate all the different elements of nature, that we give it all divine recognition as divine aspects of God. Fire, water, all these things that help us sustain our life. So that's pretty cool to know that the Sikhs celebrate this as a fire worship day as well. And then the day after that, Makar Sankranti. In the spiritual context, Makar Sankranti is a day for renewal and self-reflection. The northward journey of the sun is a symbol of enlightenment and of the disposal of the shadows of ignorance. On this day, one says goodbye to all past grudges and welcomes positivity into one's life. Okay. And the next one is one of the freedom fighters who was instrumental in forming the Indian Army. January 23rd is Subhash Chandra Bose Jayanti. And I just wanted to read a little bit about what he did, and also how spirituality was connected with him. So Subhash Chandra Bose Ji, also known as Netaji, made a significant contribution to India's freedom struggle by forming the Indian National Army, INA, and advocating for an armed resistance against British rule, famously rallying Indian soldiers with the slogan, quote, "Give me blood and I will give you freedom," unquote, while establishing the, quote, Azad Hind government, end quote, in exile, which inspired many to actively fight for independence through a more militant approach compared to Gandhi's nonviolent movement. Again, we're not encouraging any sort of violence here. This is just something that freedom fighters in all cultures have taken different approaches towards gaining that freedom. So anyway, and in terms of Subhash Chandra Bose, Netaji's spiritual connection, he was religious and spiritual. Bose's parents influenced his religious and spiritual outlook from a young age. He was also exposed to ideas from Hindu scriptures like the Vedas and the Upanishads at Ravenshaw Collegiate School. Bose was influenced by the teachings of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and Swami Vivekananda, who we mentioned earlier, whom he considered his spiritual guru. Practices. Bose carried a small copy of the Bhagavad Gita in his field uniform and meditated late at night, even in battle. Tolerance. Bose was tolerant of other faiths and believed that Hindus were a tolerant community. He once spoke out in support of students who held a puja inside a hostel that did not allow it. And his vision was Bose's daughter, Anita Bose, said that her father wanted India to be a place where all religions could coexist peacefully. And last but not least, we're a couple more things. January 26th is India Republic Day. So people should already know the significance of that. And the last one is January 30th, Mahatma Gandhi's death anniversary. We all know, and the Western great freedom fighters of this country, this nation, Martin Luther King Jr., namely him, have gained such great inspiration from Mahatma Gandhi and his life and what he accomplished, what he did, when he fought that great fight for independence and freedom for the entire Indian civilization, irrespective of whatever religion they may have followed. He did it in a non-violent way. And it's very difficult to do that because we want to retaliate. But Mahatma Gandhi showed us that retaliation and violence is not always the best way to go about it. And he gave us that peaceful outlook. So I think most of us already are very familiar with Mahatma Gandhi and his great legacy. And he, of course, was influenced by the Bhagavad Gita. He also, similar to Netaji, also had copies of the Bhagavad Gita that he regularly read. He created the bhajan Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram, which we all sing today. Patita Pavana Sita Ram. So he said the different names of God can be, you can take the names from Islam or from Christianity or from whichever religion, and they all are speaking about the same divine energy that we call God. So he brought that as a unifying line in that bhajan. So our obeisances and our, may we continue to gain inspiration from Gandhiji. So with that, I conclude going through the January calendar of special unique days.
Thank you, Prat. That was super informative. So now why don't we show a video of your grandfather, of Guruji, that might have some pearls of wisdom for us and our viewers.
Sure. And I'd like to make this sort of a regular part of our podcast going forward as well, is have a small clip of maybe 5 to 10 minutes where you guys, everybody gets to hear Guruji actually speaking about something very significant. Hopefully it's something that relates to the topic we have. But if not, it's something that I think you as listeners would definitely love to hear and definitely learn something from. So here goes.
Since the time man was able to find out unity in diversity, from the simple consciousness of animals, from the rationality of the science and reasoning, he was able to take a leap into the intuitive level. We find that leap into divine with Sri Rama, Sri Krishna, then Buddha, then Jesus. And so many masters, and most modern of all of them was Mahatma Gandhi. I hope you have seen a Gandhi movie. Mahatma Gandhi was Christ-like in modern times, great master. So, the destiny of humanity, in spite of all calamities and world wars, if you go against dharma, against the law of God, then there will be a lot of calamities, earthquakes, everything happening. Almost every week we have an earthquake in Oakland and San Francisco now. So it is going to grow. The drought, the famine, the Edgar Cayce, Jean Dixon, and so many Western astrologers also have predicted about this. All over the world, this pain will be there because we are not going towards the truth which is within. And we, as our senses are extroverted, we always run to find out permanent peace and happiness outside. We run outside in search of happiness and peace. Fortunately, it is not outside. Peace is inside. Kingdom of heaven is within. You may acquire any amount of money, still you will not have peace. You may have any number of years to live with long life, still you will not have peace. You will have very good physical health, but unless the mind is tuned with the cosmic mind, the super mind, this fear of death, fear of change, fear of loss, all this and more is going to take place. To try to find out peace and happiness in the world is like weighing frogs. When you put two frogs here, from the other side, another three, four frogs have already jumped. And again you put, and again they jump. It is like fixing a dog's tail, straightening a dog's tail. You straighten it and leave, and it's again going to be curved. That is the nature of relativity. It is conditioned that way. So no matter how much we leave or jump, it is conditioned that way that we are transit passengers here. This world is an airport. We are in transit. Our permanent abode is God or truth, in any name you call. God will not be angry if you call him Krishna or Rama or Jesus or Moses. Or you call him, you are not existing at all. Even though you say, God, you are not existing, he is not going to withdraw the sun and shine, water and rain from anybody, because he knows that we know not. When we realize, then the story is different. Then what happens is domination of the spirit over the flesh. We are all moving in that direction now. That is the human destiny. So therefore you began showing Superman movie nowadays. Because the next leap which man takes is towards the super mind. Previously it was acquired by Jesus, by Moses, by Muhammad, by Buddha, and a few prophets. But now we are Aquarian age children. We are an Aquarian age. In this age, each one of us exerting little spiritual discipline of prayer and meditation, heartfelt prayer. You have to feel it, you have to experience it, and you have to clean your emotions and heart through prayer. You have to join your palms, you have to bend your head, you have to do several salutations, make obeisance every day. When you feel that you cleared the way, made your heart transparent like a mirror, made your mind rid of fear and anger. Made your mind rid of fear and anger. Then you are entitled to enjoy the divine. Then you are eligible for immortality. Therefore, purification, confession, yoga, meditation, health food, rhythmic breathing, and to feel God in every tree, leaves, sun, moon, your beautiful children. Your husband is God. Your wife is Goddess. Your home is Rome. Your home is Om. This human dignity, human feeling, and this love which is the source of creation, this sooner we realize, the quicker the revelation, realization. And each one is entitled to attain this unity of consciousness, this cosmic consciousness. Therefore, knowing that a treasure of immortality is within us, if we forget that and run after things thinking that by acquiring this I will be happy, by acquiring that I will be more happy. Friends, I went 22 times around the world, almost in every city. And there are not many happy people, very few. And they are found somewhere in the Himalaya. But you can be that happiest person right here, even without Himalaya. And the simple way for that is to turn all our attachments to God, or to see the same God in your wife, in your husband, in your home, in your children. One is called Jnana Yoga, another is called Bhakti Yoga. In Jnana Yoga, you renounce everything and see the self in everything and everything in the self. In Bhakti Yoga, you live in the world, you have your householdership, you are a married person, you have children, you have grandchildren. They are all manifestation of God on earth. It is not severing the connection from the family, not severing the connection from the world, not severing the connection from the flesh, really, what you call spirituality, but it is only the domination of the spirit over the flesh. We are not slave to our passion and ego. Instead, ego and passion could be there as our slaves. You can use them whenever you want. That is called freedom.
Beautiful.
You know, concludes our first episode. To all our listeners, thank you so much for, if you've listened to the whole thing, we really can't thank you enough. We're just starting out with this podcast, and our hope is that the people that we are closely connected with will certainly listen to this. And like I said, I will be sharing an email address where you can send questions. I haven't created one for our group yet, so I will send my email address. I'll say my email address is Pratt, P-R-A-T, the number 3, followed by T, again, Pratt, 3, T as in Thomas, at gmail.com. Feel free to send me any questions that you may have. I'll share that with Vikram and Christiane, and we'll certainly research those things. I'm not saying we know everything. If we know something, then that's great. If not, we'd love to actually learn it for ourselves and help you guys understand, get the answer to your questions. So hope you guys enjoyed Guruji's talk, the little talk clipping that we shared. And Vikram, Christiane, anything you'd like, any closing remarks before we end this episode, our pilot episode? So exciting.
Yeah, I'd just say it was really exciting, and I'd say even therapeutic in a way to be able to express a lot of these thoughts through this medium, and looking forward to hearing from the listeners and sharing more about different facets of spirituality, which is an unending ocean. So lots to
Absolutely.
talk about, and folks, do share with your friends and subscribe, send your questions, and we look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you.
Likewise, thank you guys. It's been great. Can't wait to keep it going and see what comes next. So take care, everyone.
Yep. Thank you so much, and we'll hopefully you enjoyed this episode, and we'll do another one next month in February. All right.
Great.
May everyone be peaceful, and God bless everybody. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you.
Om Shanti.